Hi, in this next episode, we're going to show you how to use Secure Shell. Secure Shell is an iteration of the original Telnet protocol. What it allows you to do is connect to a remote server and log in remotely to that server on port number 22, where Secure Shell or SSH services are running. So throughout this lab, we're going to show how to connect to a remote server using SSH and how to actually bypass that username and password type authentication by using SSH key-based authentication, by generating a key pair, one public, one private, and sharing that key with remote servers that you will later connect to and authenticate against using those key pairs. Please join us in this upcoming lab where we show you how to connect to a remote server over SSH. In this episode, we're going to talk about SSH. Now, SSH stands for Secure Shell. Think of the Linux shell as the command line, as many Linux shells, of course, work exclusively directly from command line, services running in the background, supporting some application or some service. Now, Secure Shell means that this shell, I can log in and use this server from a remote connection over a secure shell. So for the purposes of showing this, I have installed a second CentOS installation. Now, my second CentOS installation, we're going to pretend for the purposes of showing SSH that this might be on another network, in some other server, in some other location in the world. However, as long as I have the credentials to log into CentOS 1 here, meaning I have a username and I have the password, and of course I have the location, meaning the IP address for the server, I can use the built-in SSH utility in order to actually connect to my remote server. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to say SSH, and you can give a username or implicitly use the username of your own user, or you can give a user like Bob at, and this could be either an IP address or a host name, which is, of course, we currently didn't set. We just have our host name as localhost, and the same thing as localhost here. So we're going to use the IP address, which I have set for my remote user, for my remote connection, which is 172.16.10.101. When I press enter, you should see a message that starts my SSH connection, and this is simply saying that, hey, the identity of the server, it's not known, so we're going to add that server's footprint so we can identify this server down the road. So I'm going to say enter to add that fingerprint. Sorry, I was supposed to type yes, right? So it's either a yes or a no, or actually give the fingerprint of the server, should you already know the identity. So I'm going to say yes to add the ID. And now you can see that at that server, I'm being prompted to log in. And then I can type that user's information and go ahead, and now I'm logged into the remote server. If you remember, we have created other files in previous demos, and I have access to all the files. So this is accessing my server across a remote secure shell. I'm going to type exit, and now another way to connect instead of using passwords, you can use keys in order to verify yourself instead of using passwords. So in order to do that, I actually will have to type SSH-keygen and generate a key pair for my user. There's a private key, which is the decryption key, and the public key, which is the encryption key. It's like locking a lock and unlocking it. The private key will unlock, and the public key will lock or create my encryption. I'll share my public key with my remote server here, and then when I go to connect, my remote server will create the encryption with a public key, which then only my private key can decrypt and then access or authenticate against that server using keys instead of typing your password. So The process is really simple. Creating a key pair with SSH-keygen. We're going to save it to my own personal home folder. So you can see Home Administrator. Inside the SSH folder, I'll create some keys. I can enter no passphrase, meaning I don't want to use any password to use that key. And now I can share this key with my remote server, and that key will be used in the authentication process. The remote server will create an encryption, which then only the private key of this key pair will decrypt. So let's share that key. So I'm going to say SSH-copy-ID. So that's going to take my public key and copy it over to my remote server. So I'll give the address of my remote server here, which is 172.16.10.101. And now I will install the key as it says, installing my public key there. Now, when I try to connect with SSH 172.16.101, it should automatically connect me without actually requesting any password. And here we can see I immediately logged in without sharing or being prompted for the user password because we have actually set it up to authenticate using a key pair. This is extremely useful and easy to set up. I will close out this episode. I hope you've learned something, and I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.